Welcome again to the Morning Edition. The Ministry of Public Administration, in collaboration with the e-business Round the Table, will host a series of 3 breakfast seminars on the proposed national e-business policy. These 3 breakfast seminars will be held between July 8th and July 15th in North Trinidad, while the 2nd and 3rd will be held in Tobago and the South Trinidad respectively. E-business holds great potential and opportunities for Trinidad and Tobago businesses. Aside from the access to new and bigger markets, e-business can facilitate the reduction of costs and faster turnaround times by streamlining and integrating processes along the entire business value chain. Here to tell us more is Mr. Larry Hawaii, Chairman of the Business Roundtable, and Mr. Ronald Hines, Chairman of the e-business Roundtable. Atiba Phillips will also take part in the discussion. Stay with us. We want to welcome Mr. Hawaii and Mr. Hines.
Thank you.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you. Good morning, Morgan, and good morning to all your viewers.
So what's this fantastic story about e-business, and what's the role of your bank and all that?
Well, actually, the e-business roundtable, if I could back up a little bit, Trinidad and Tobago has actually slipped a bit in the world rankings for competitiveness and as far as the use of ICT, information and communication technology, in Trinidad and Tobago, and its use as a facilitator for business. And recognizing this slippage, the ICT division of the Ministry of Public Administration really approached the private sector to see how best we might be able to partner with them in trying to reverse this slide and to position Trinidad and Tobago for the 21st century as far as ICT is concerned. I am chairman of the e-business roundtable, and that's the capacity in which I'm here this morning. And the e-business roundtable is really a collection of individuals from the private sector who have been chosen to partner with the government's ICT division to try to achieve what we want to achieve in the area of the information communication technology. So on the e-business roundtable, we have representatives from the Bankers Association, from the Chamber of Commerce, from AmCham, from the South Chamber, from the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, from the Point Lisas Chamber, so there's quite a wide cross-section of individuals from the private sector. And we are partnering because we in business need to see this development take place in the ICT sector because it is a key facilitator for our business. You know, our business cannot be competitive in the 21st century unless we can master ICT.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah.
There are thousands of Trinidadians, as you speak here this morning, who are buying goods from companies all over the world on the net. Are we selling anything to the world on the net from Trinidad?
Not that I am aware of. I don't know, Ronald, if you know of any.
I guess I'll describe it as not enough.
Yeah.
Because a number of the carnival bands, for example, utilize it. So it's not that it doesn't exist, but it's definitely not enough.
So in terms of your purpose to come here, is it one of your objectives to make sure that we earn income because we're selling to people in Japan, in Korea, in Hamburg, in Dresden, and Oslo, goods and services in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, remember, for anything that the government is doing to work, for any government policy, because we particularly focus on an e-business policy that the government is seeking to get input into, for that to work, people need to be aware. People need to be aware of what doesn't exist. People need to be aware of what needs to exist. And there are whole sets of synergies that are required. Synergies from government services, synergies from the banking sector, synergies from different aspects of the private sector. So part of what is absolutely necessary for the thing to happen is that a set of people need to get together, need to be aware of what each other is doing. So it's not enough, for example, for the private sector to say we will do this. So for example, to bring about some of the things that you're alluding to, because to do that, there's need for legislation. To create the proper legislation, there's need to have a proper awareness of what's going on.
We need to spend some time on that because in my head I'm saying the private sector should lead this, but the government obviously is a constraint, so we want to discuss that, but let's take a break first. Stay with us, you're looking at the Morning Edition. Yes, welcome again to the Morning Edition. We have some eminent gentlemen here, Mr. Hawaii. We've just been joined by Atiba Phillips, and we're talking about e-commerce and e-business. And before we took the break, I was trying to engage the panel concerning the matter of who should be really leading. Is it not the private sector? And what is the role of government in facilitating or hindering this process? I want to comment on it, focused on why are we not more aggressive? Mr. Hawaii did say that we have slipped somewhat in competitiveness, and we do know that we're earning a lot of money from offshore gas exports and energy exports. But if you're going to transform the domestic economy, it must mean that citizens who are entrepreneurs are selling more to the outside world. Why is there a government constraint in your judgment on this matter?
Well, as I said, I don't think the issue is so much that there is simply a government constraint. There are many constraints. And I want to say that one of the reasons I think that the National Business Policy series is important is because it gives people the opportunity to see many sides of the equation. Very often we think, well, if the government does this, then that is solved, or if the private sector does this, that will be solved. I think it's far more important that the private sector is aware of what the government is doing, the government is aware of what the private sector is doing, that there is an ability, there's a capacity to work together to together solve the problems.
The world, when I say we, the world, the global economy, has been in this matter of globalization and ICT for decades. You are telling me now there's not a government constraint. Do we have the laws?
No, I didn't say there's not a government constraint. I say it's more than just a government
constraint.
All right,
okay. So I agree with that. But why in 2008, July, we still don't have appropriate legislation or institutional capability to facilitate this process? After all these years of talking about globalization and the consequences and the benefits and the costs, we need explanations for these things.
Well, one thing I can proffer is that indeed we have made quite a few strides in the last couple of years. We have liberalized the telecoms environment. There are a number of competitors in now. There are more cell phones in the country than there are people. There are a number of cable stations, a number of 34 radio stations. There are a number of dynamics that have been happening. You would have seen broadband with Flow and Triple Play and TSTT's Blink, etc. So there are accelerating developments in the market, so that it is not as though we are at scratch. We have done quite a bit, and that's part of what the series will talk about, give people an awareness of the things that are happening. I don't think that, in fact, I know that people are not aware of those developments, and that's part of the reason why our international rankings are so low, because people are not aware, and when they get asked questions from the international surveys, they base their response on what they know.
There's a gentleman whose name I can't recall at the moment, but I'm listening to you, gentleman here, who was a minister of trade in a former Venezuelan government before Chavez came to power. And he's written a book on the way globalization has encouraged, has facilitated criminal activity. I know after 9/11, a lot of the banking rules and regulations had come under severe scrutiny to sort of undermine the ability of money laundering and gun running and drug trafficking and all like that. To what extent your roundtable is focusing on these kinds of issues, which must come up if you're going to be getting more involved in ICT and e-commerce?
Well, let me say, Morgan, that in fact there is a strategic plan, fast forward, for taking the entire nation forward in the area of ICT, right? And in fact, what you're alluding to is a small piece of that whole, that whole construct that we have to deal with, right? So that, for example, as Atiba alluded to, you had to deal with things like the interconnect and the liberalization of the telecoms market. For example, the question of interconnect between Digicel and TSTT was an issue, and the government turned to the e-business roundtable to help with that process of trying to mediate that issue, and it was successfully resolved, so that now you can text between TSTT and we also and Digicel, and we're also dealing with the issue of co-location to try and of towers and so on. So all of those issues are happening. For example, another big project is to bring online many of the government agencies, many of the government services. For example, that is why you can now start applying for your birth certificate and your passport and that kind of thing online. So there are a whole lot of things going on, and right now there's another big project going on to help to integrate the facilities of all the agencies together so that you can easily get information on individuals. And that brings us then to the point you were asking. Because if we can identify you as an individual online and easily, many things can happen automatically. For example, banking services, as you're talking about, for example. We in the banking industry want to know that you are who you claim you are. Because there are things like, for example, automated loan machines that we could bring on into play. You know, you have automatic teller machines. In the banking sector, you could bring an automated loan machine. The person just simply goes in, keys in how much he wants for the loan. The machine goes to a central database, confirms that you are the person that you say you are, right? And then it does your credit score for you, determine how much you can get borrow, and actually can even make a decision to lend you more. You know, for example, when they work your credit score out, they can go to a central database, check your credit rating, go to another database and check to make sure you don't have any criminal record or anything like that. And based on your credit rating, based on your income, because they could verify from your employer and so on, right? What they can say is, listen, you know, Mr. Job, you know, the machine will come back and say, well, look, we have scored you for 20,000, you only asked for 10. Would you like us to credit the other 10 to your credit card, right? You say yes or no on the machine, and then you sign, right? The area that we have to deal with is the legislation to allow you to be able to take the electronic signature, right? But those are some areas that are being dealt with, right? But that is an area where e-business and being online and having all the facilities online that you can verify an individual's bona fides and so on and know who he is can help us to reduce money laundering, because we can check a number of databases to make sure you're who you say you are, and can facilitate and make your life more convenient in terms of the businesses and the services that you are trying to get automatically and online very easily.
I'm glad you make these explanations, because it's not sufficiently well known how many of these so-called independent countries in the modern era have become, in fact, criminal conspiracies, because the drug barons, the narco-trafficantes, they control so much resources, so much more than a government. And it's good that you're telling the public these things so they understand it's not just a matter of getting open up to the global economy via e-commerce. There's a whole lot of other interesting things that must come to place at the same time.
Which is why I think the series is important, which is why I think it's important for larger numbers of people to become aware of what the issues are. That's why it's important for a dialogue and a discussion to take place. And so our expectation is that with the meeting starting tomorrow and going to the 11th, that more people have an opportunity to, one, hear what's happening, two, talk about what's not happening that needs to happen, so that we can together advance it.
Mr. Hoa, you were saying that there's some seminars to come. We want to take a break, and when we get back, you're going to give some details on where these things are taking place and what the objectives are, what the modalities are, and what you hope to achieve. So stay with us. You're looking at the Morning Edition. We take a break. Yes, good morning and welcome again to the Morning Edition. We're talking about the knowledge economy, about modernization, about a situation in Trinidad and Tobago where incomes are earned not by pickaxe and shovel on the roadside, but by using your brains and selling things to the world. Mr. Hawaii was suggesting to me that there are going to be 3 seminars where these issues are going to be raised, and I was asking him, Where would the seminars be held? What would be the objectives of those seminars? And who is to come to the seminar?
Okay, there are 3 seminars. One will be held tomorrow at the Chamber of Commerce building in West Moorings. The second will be held on July 11th. That will be in Tobago at VHL Limited, which is the Vanguard Hotel, which was previously the Tobago Hilton. And the third one will be held on July 15th at the Cara Suites in central Trinidad for people in South. The purpose of these three seminars that we're having is really to expose the national e-business policy to the wider community and to get the input of individuals. So these are consultations which will allow individual members of the public to make input on some of the issues that will be included in the national e-business policy. So that is an important thing. The second thing that we want to do is to increase public awareness of what is happening and to encourage people to get online and to start using the facilities that are there available for the general public. Because as Atiba was alluding to, one of the critical issues is that we, in Trinidad and Tobago, don't know enough about all the facilities that the government has been putting in place with respect to making e-business and ICT generally available for the wider population.
Okay. You said Tobago is going to be on the 11th. And at which place?
At the VHL Hotel Limited, which is formerly was formerly the Hilton, Tobago Hilton.
All right. I think I want to take the opportunity, as you mentioned, that I was supposed to give a lecture in Tobago on Wednesday evening, and I can't do it again because I'm doing the morning edition this week. Mr. Phillips.
Yes, sir.
You want to outline exactly how government is involved in this process?
Well, I mean, it's the government's business to do national policy, and we moving towards a knowledge-based economy. We see e-business as a critical linchpin in that continuum, and therefore a policy is required for e-business. And within the policy, we're talking about things such as clarifying marketplace rules, so the legislation that is required, the e-transactions, data protection, etc., that is required, IP protection, etc. We're talking about increasing participation of businesses, supporting them through incentives, through facilitations of various kinds. We're talking about developing networks so that whatever we do in Trinidad has to be interoperable with what's happening in the Caribbean and in the wider international space so that we can exchange information, etc. We're talking about human capital development. In order for this thing to be sustainable, we have to have trained people locally, and we have to be able to innovate, not just consume. We're talking about e-payments, etc. So all of the things that are required for e-business in Trinidad and Tobago to thrive and to really become, a significant contributor to the GDP. That's what we're dealing with in the policy.
There's a poet called Rudyard Kipling who has a statement, "What do they know of England who only England know?" And I say this because I want you to explain, why is Costa Rica, Singapore, why are they so much more advanced than us in this business?
Well, I mean...
You studied that, of course.
Of course. I mean, one of the historical realities is that Trinidad has really been a petrol-based and energy-based economy for a long time. We are just now starting the thrust to move towards a knowledge-based economy, which requires a number of different set of skill sets and a different way of organizing economic activity. So that's one of the reasons why some other countries that do not have those kinds of endowments have taken this course before us. But we are strongly on the bandwagon now, and leveraging where we are in energy and other things, we can then make a strong move into ICT.
And you think that the kind of inertia that resides in this country, because I know Lloyd Best and other people have been for the past generation saying we need to be more aggressive in developing what Best had called an onshore economy, imitating what has been done in Costa Rica and Singapore. And it seemed like the people who had been in charge of managing this economy, they have failed to energize the wider society to understand the implications of looking at what has been done in Singapore, Costa Rica, and so many other places?
Well, I can say that we are, based on my experience of working here, we are indeed looking at Singapore and Costa Rica and Malta, Ireland, a number of the countries that have done this before.
Ireland is a good example of that.
Exactly. And again, maybe not enough is known about the work that's being done and about the National ICT Plan, Fast Forward, and the refresh. And that's why these interventions, these seminars, the public consultations on e-business policy, etc., are extremely important, because it really will start to change some of the mindsets out there in the wider public about what Trinidad and Tobago is up to and what is possible for Trinidad and Tobago, and start to deliver on some of the promise.
But I like how you juxtaposed what we might have done and what we haven't done in critical areas like e-commerce, and juxtapose that against what we have done, perhaps successfully, you might even say too successfully, to the extent that it has taken away from some of the energies that should go in other places. But I think the reason why I say I like that juxtaposition is because we often think of what we have not done well, and we focus on that, and it's important that we focus on that to fix it. But I think by talking about gas and energy, we have done that well. The problem, to a large degree, we have done that well. And just like we can talk about Singapore and Ireland in some other cases, people are able to talk about Trinidad and Tobago as far as energy policy goes. So what we have to do now is leverage the fact that we have done some things well, believe that we have a capacity to do some things well, which now includes this. So we have a capacity to do this well. We may not have done, we certainly have not done as much as we might have done, but this is the time when I think we have the opportunity to break out of that. So to the extent that that has been so, and there's a valid argument for it, the issue now is a time where diversification of the economy is on the top of people's minds, is on the top of the agenda, and this is one of the areas that we can begin or continue that process. So I think it's absolutely correct to put those two things together, but I think we could take away from it the positive side of it, which is we've done it before, we could do it again.
But what you're saying there, I'm listening to you carefully. A lot of what was done in the energy sector required reliance on the energy companies.
It didn't start that way, you know.
Well,
the government got off the ground with that in spite of their inability to attract people to come in the first place.
But the technologies that we used to win gas and all these methanol plants and all of that, a lot of those technologies weren't homegrown. They came with the foreign companies that spent the billions of foreign direct investment there.
No, but I want to correct that. It didn't come with foreign companies. The energy-based sector began with government state investment. That's how it began.
Sir, I said the technologies used to win gas from offshore Trinidad to build methanol plants weren't homegrown. That's what I'm using English language. I'm saying that the technologies. And that tells me that we need to look a little differently at developing an onshore sector here that is going to take advantage of e-commerce. It's not a symmetrical kind of thing, because we're not going to be able to depend on foreign direct investment and foreign technology to develop the domestic economy the way we did with the energy sector. It's a totally different game.
But Morgan, I probably might want to differ a little bit in that technology is available everywhere in the world. You can buy it, right? So that for us, in a globalized environment, it doesn't matter where the technology comes from. The important thing for us is that we know where it is, we know where we want to go and what we want to do, and which technologies are the ones that will get us there. And that is what we're about trying to determine. Which are those technologies and how best we can put them together to make Trinidad and Tobago successful.
Okay, we want to apologize, as you were expected to speak with somebody from the Police Service Association, and we're not seeming to be able to get through to that. But we want to thank you people for coming, and we hope that this discussion and the seminars that are to take place are going to develop some of the ideas and the themes that we talk about here, especially the point of what the government is doing. because very often people seem to think that all the government doing is bad things. And I think I look at your face and I see a sense of success and euphoria. So you ought to be doing something good. Thank you, Mr. Hawaii. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Right.